are listening to the most comprehensive paranormal archive on the internet.
Welcome to Salsido Paranormal. I'm your host, James Salsido, and tonight I'm continuing my series review, The Book of the Damned by Charles Fort. As always, you can find all episodes of the show along with links to social media, ways to listen, and ways to support the show at the website, and that is salsidoparanormal.com. That's SALSIDO paranormal.com. And support is never expected, but always appreciated, as there are expenses in making these shows. And there's many ways to support the show. You can share the show with others and rate and review it on your favorite podcast platforms. You can sign up for the Patreon feed and get all the extra content there for as little as $1 a month. And you can also check out the merchandise store and get all kinds of shirts and some other items there with designs made by friends of the show. Please follow friends of the show, including Jen, the Arcane Observer, who has her own channel and is the co-host of this show as well, with me on the weekends, on Saturdays, usually when she can make it. Also, Ricky of the Anything is Possible podcast, who does a paranormal-themed show on Sundays, which I usually co-host. And Michael Strange, host of Troubled Minds Radio, which I call into a lot, and also the Troubled Minds Radio Network, KUAP, Digital Broadcasting, where you can hear all kinds of amazing shows, as well as my own, online, 24/7 for free. So a few things to keep in mind here as before I get started with the reading again. First, there may be things in here that Fort says that you and or I may not agree with. So just keep in mind those are Fort's words and thoughts, not my own, unless I say otherwise. Also, there may be things in here that Fort describes as being mysterious that are not so mysterious anymore, as these books were written over 100 years ago. So a lot has happened in terms of science in that time. And the last thing, of course, as always, is I'm going to apologize in advance for any mispronunciations of words or names, as both can be hard to say, especially when there's some that are not even in English. So, with all that said, let me find my place here where I was at, and get this started again. So, he says, here are the data. And there's a publication here I can't say the name of, and the number is 6-191. February 16th, 1861. An earthquake at Singapore. Then came an extraordinary downpour of rain, or as much water as any good-sized lake would consist of. For 3 days, this rain, or this fall of water, came down in torrents, in pools on the ground, formed by this deluge. Great numbers of fishes were found. The writer says that he had himself seen nothing but water fall from the sky. Whether I'm emphasizing what a deluge it was or not, he says that so terrific had been the downpour that he had not been able to see 3 steps away from him. The natives said that the fishes had fallen from the sky. 3 days later, the pools dried up, and many of and many dead fishes were found. But in the first place, though that's an expression for which we have an instinctive dislike, the fishes had been active and uninjured. Then follows material for another of our little studies in the phenomena of disregard. A psychotropism here is mechanically to take pen in hand and mechanically write that fishes found on the ground after a heavy rainfall came from overflowing streams. The writer of the account says that some of the fishes had been found in his courtyard, which was surrounded by high walls. Paying no attention to this, a correspondent, again, publication I can't say the name of, 6-317, explains that in the heavy rain, a body of water had probably overflowed, carrying fishes with it. We are told by the first writer that these fishes of Singapore were of a species that was very abundant near Singapore. So I think myself that a whole lake full of them had been shaken down from the Super Sargasso Sea. Under the circumstances, we have thought, however, if appearance of strange fishes after an earthquake be more pleasing in the sight, or to the nostrils of the new dominant, we faithfully and piously supply that incense. An account of the occurrence at Singapore was read by M. de Castelnau before the French Academy. He recalled that upon a former occasion, he had submitted to the Academy the circumstance that fishes of a new species had appeared at the Cape of Good Hope after an earthquake. It seems proper, and it will give luster to the new orthodoxy, now to have an instance in which not merely quake and fall of rocks or meteorites, or quake and either eclipse or luminous appearances in the sky have occurred, but in which are combined all of the phenomena, one or more of which, when accompanying earthquake, indicate in our acceptance the proximity of another world. This time, a longer duration is indicated than in other instances. In the Canadian Institute Proceedings 2-7-198, there is an account by the Deputy Commissioner at Dharamsala of the extraordinary Dharamsala meteorite coated with ice. But the combination of events related by him is still more extraordinary. That within a few months of the fall of this meteorite, there had been a fall of live fishes at Benares, a shower of red substance at for this is a name that's going to get me to sound like I'm saying a bad word. It's Furruckabad. Yeah, so it's Furruckabad, a dark spot observed on the disk of the, and I'm probably saying that name entirely wrong anyway, of the sun, an earthquake, and then the quotation marks here, an unnatural darkness for some duration, in quotation marks, and a luminous appearance in the sky that looked like an aurora borealis. But there's more to this climax. Let's see. We are introduced to a new order of phenomena. Visitors. The deputy commissioner writes that in the evening, after the fall of the Dhurmsala meteorite, or a mass of stone covered with ice, he saw lights. Some of them were not very high. They appeared and went out and reappeared. I have read many accounts of the Dhurmsala meteorite, July 28th, 1860, but never in any other of them a mention of this new correlate. Something as out of place in the 19th century as would have been an aeroplane, the invention of which would not, in our acceptance, have been permitted in the 19th century, though adumbrations to it were permitted. This writer says that the lights moved like fire balloons, but, in quotation marks, I am sure that they were neither fire balloons nor bonfires or any other thing of that sort, but bona fide lights in the heavens, end quotation marks. Let's see. So that's fascinating. And here again, you have 14 about anomalous things in the sky. And also, I've heard this before, when you have people, and this is sort of a modern version of this with modern groups where, for instance, I've heard that some UFO groups, when they get a report of an experience from someone, that person will tell them, I've had these other weird experiences too with Bigfoot or with ghosts, and some UFO groups will basically not be interested in that, will not pay any attention to that. And I've heard of the same with some cryptid or Bigfoot research groups, where they're interested only in the appearance or possible appearance of this creature they're looking for. In other words, these different groups looking into specific things are only interested in these specific things, even when it seems like so many people out there who have experience with one thing at some point, either around the same time or after, have experience with another thing. And it's only looking at, basically at all these things together that you start to see patterns in all this, and it really becomes a lot more fascinating to me and to other people, some other people out there. But then to others, they're very much focused on one thing, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But I do think reports of other things can be lost in that way too. Anyway, so, and I'm just drawing that parallel to other publications about this event of this meteorite, where there's mentions of it in other publications, according to Fort here, but no one else mentions any sightings of lights associated with it. So, anyway, continuing on here, this says, it's a subject for which we shall have to have a separate expression. Trespassers upon territory to which something else has a legal right. Perhaps someone lost a rock and he and his friends came down looking for it. In the evening, or secret agents or emissaries who had an appointment with certain esoteric ones near Dharamsala, things or beings coming down to explore and unable to stay down long. In a way, another strange occurrence during an earthquake is suggested. The ancient Chinese tradition, the marks like hoof marks in the ground, we have thought, with a low degree of acceptance, of another world that may be in secret communication with certain esoteric ones of this Earth's inhabitants, and have messages in symbols like hoof marks that are sent to some receptor or special hill upon this earth, and of messages that at times miscarry. This other world comes close to this world. There are quakes, but advantage of proximity is taken to send a message. The message, designed for a receptor in India, perhaps, or in Central Europe, miscarries all the way to England. Marks like the marks of the Chinese tradition are found upon a beach in Cornwall after an earthquake. Philosophical Transactions 50-500. After the quake of July 15th, 1757, upon the sands of Penzance, Cornwall, in an area of more than 100 square yards, were found marks like hoof prints, except that they were not crescentic. We feel a similarity, but note an arbitrary disregard of our own this time. It seems to us that marks described as, in quotation marks, little cones surrounded by basins of equal diameter, in quotation marks, would be like hoof prints, if hoofs printed complete circles. Other disregards are that there were, I didn't miss anything. There were black specks on the tops of the cones, as if something, perhaps gaseous, had issued from them. that from one of these formations came a gush of water as thick as a man's wrist. Of course, the opening of springs is common in earthquakes, but we suspect, myself, that the negative absolute is compelling us to put in this datum and its disorders. There's another matter in which the negative absolute seems to work against us. Let's see here. Though to superchemistry, we have introduced the principle of celestial metathesis, we have no good data of exchange of substances during proximities. The data are all of falls and not of upward translations. Of course, upward impulses are common during earthquakes, but having a datum upon a tree or a fish or a brick or a man that ever did go up and stay up and that never did come down again. Our classic of the horse and barn occurred in what was called a whirlwind. It is said that in an earthquake in Calabria, paving stones shot up far into the air. Let's see, okay. The writer doesn't specifically say that they came down again, but something seems to tell me they did. The corpses of Riobamba. Let's see. Humboldt reported that in the quake of Riobamba, and I'm probably saying that wrong, I apologize, in quotation marks, bodies were torn upward from graves, in quotation marks, that, open quotation marks, the vertical motion was so strong that bodies were tossed several hundred feet in the air, in quotation marks. I explain. And he does. There's this next paragraph here. However, we have less than a minute to go in this show. So I'm really fascinated to see what he goes into more here as we continue the next time on this series. But this is fascinating because it is one thing for things to come down, but another for things to, I guess, there'd be such an impact that it would drive things up from the ground, or for things to be drawn up from the ground. Excuse me. And I'm curious to see what more he has to say on all these things, because this is all odd, anomalous things too in its own way. And but yeah, thank you all for listening, and I will talk to you all next time on Salsido Paranormal. Take care.